Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to Shloka Day. Today's Shloka is Shloka number 55 of chapter 18. Bhaktya mam abhijanati
Bhaktya mam abhijanati
yavan yaschasmi tattvataha
yavanyashchasmi tattvataha
tato mam tattvato jnatva
tato mam tattvato jnatva
vishate tadanantaram.
vishate tadanantaram.
Bhagavad meaning, translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhaktya,
Bhaktya
by pure devotional service.
by pure devotional service.
Mam,
Me
me, abhijanati,
abhijanati.
one can know.
One can know.
Yavan,
Yavan
as much as.
Yaha cha asmi,
As I am. Tattvataha,
tatvataha,
in truth.
in truth,
Tataha,
tataha,
thereafter.
thereafter.
Me,
Me,
tattvataha,
tatvataha,
in truth.
in truth.
Jnatva,
Nyatva,
knowing.
knowing.
Vishate,
Vishate,
he enters.
he enters.
Tat anantaram,
Tat anantaram,
thereafter.
thereafter.
Translation. One can understand me as I am,
One can understand me as I am,
as the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
as the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
only by devotional service.
only by devotional service.
And when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion,
And when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion,
he can enter into the kingdom of God.
he can enter into the kingdom of God.
Yeah. It's a very important shloka about which type of transcendentalist actually gets to know who is the Lord and have an intimate relationship with him. So essentially the Lord is saying, only my devotee will come back to me. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and his plenary portions cannot be understood by mental speculation nor by the non-devotees. If anyone wants to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has to take to pure devotional service under the guidance of a pure devotee. Otherwise, the truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead will always be hidden. So essentially, Prabhupada is writing that we have to practice Bhakti Yoga under the guidance of a pure devotee. As already stated in Bhagavad Gita 7.25, Naham Prakasha Sarvasya, he is not revealed to everyone. No one can understand God simply by erudite scholarship or mental speculation. Only one who is actually engaged in Krishna consciousness and devotional service can understand what Krishna is. University degrees are not helpful. One who is fully conversant with the Krishna science becomes eligible to enter into the spiritual kingdom, the abode of Krishna. Becoming Brahman does not mean that one loses his identity. Devotional service is there, and as long as devotional service exists, there must be God, the devotee, and the process of devotional service. So there is Bhagavan, there is Bhakta, and the relationship between the two of them, a reciprocal relationship between the two of them, is established through the process of bhakti. Such knowledge is never vanquished, even after liberation. Liberation involves getting free from the concept of material life. Remember, we discussed what is the goal of the Jnanis? To get free from this trap of this material world. Their focus is not on service. Their focus is not on loving Krishna. Their focus is saving themselves. That's it. So here Prabhupada is saying, liberation involves getting free from the concept of material life. In spiritual life, the same distinction is there. The same individuality is there, but in pure Krishna consciousness. That means a devotee who is offering loving service to the Lord is also liberated. But their goal is not liberation, their goal is service. One should not mistakenly think that the word Vishate enters into me supports the monist theory that one becomes homogeneous with the impersonal Brahman. No, Vishate means that one can enter into the abode of the Supreme Lord in one's individuality to engage in his association and render service unto him. For instance, a green bird enters a green tree, not to become one with the tree, but to enjoy the fruits of the tree. Impersonalists generally give the example of a river flowing into the ocean and merging. This may be a source of happiness for the impersonalist, but the personalist keeps his personal individuality like an aquatic in the ocean. We find so many living entities within the ocean if we go deep. Surface acquaintance with the ocean is not sufficient. One must have complete knowledge of the aquatics living in the ocean depths. So Prabhupada is summarizing a little bit of what Rupa Goswami has written in the Nectar of Devotion. That we retain our individual identity, those who are practicing Bhakti Yoga. Because of his pure devotional service, a devotee can understand the transcendental qualities and the opulences of the Supreme Lord and Truth. As it is stated in the 11th chapter, only by devotional service can one understand. The same is confirmed here. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by devotional service and enter into his kingdom. After attainment of the Brahma Bhuta stage of freedom from material conceptions, devotional service begins by one's hearing about the Lord. So everything begins with Shravanam. Shravanam has to be supplemented with Kirtanam and all of the other rangas of Bhakti. When one hears about the Supreme Lord, automatically the Brahma Bhuta stage develops and material contamination, greediness, and lust for sense enjoyment disappears. Which is interesting because if you look at the examples given in Shastra of the different limbs of Bhakti and who represents that limb most perfectly. So, Shravanam was Parikshit Maharaj, Kirtanam was Shukadev Goswami. So, one achieved God consciousness simply by hearing, the other achieved God consciousness simply by speaking and glorifying the Lord. Right? So that is why in a Nectar of Devotion it says that any one of the 9 limbs of bhakti, if it is practiced perfectly, that also allows you to enter the spiritual world. But because we don't have such high levels of concentration, we have to do a little bit of everything to get a feel for what it is to actually serve the Lord. So there's nothing preventing us from engaging in service. As lust and desires disappear from the heart of a devotee, he becomes more attached to the service of the Lord. So how do you know you're progressing on the path of spiritual consciousness? When you're engaged in more service. How do you get engaged in more service? When you detach yourself from all other activities, telling yourself, this is no longer important to me. For me, service to the Lord is more important. That is how you know you're making spiritual progress. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you should rest and get complacent, even in service. So the closer you get to the Lord, the higher the chances of committing offenses. And spiritual offenses are even worse than just committing sins. Because for spiritual offenses, you have to beg forgiveness from the person that you offended. And that person has to genuinely forgive you because the Lord is not involved in the picture here. Just remember Durvasa Muni. What did the Lord tell him? You go back to Ambarish Maharaj and beg forgiveness. Because this has nothing to do with me. If you've upset my devotee, well, I'm not pleased. The best thing is to go make amends with that devotee. Yeah. So, so how do you know? As lust and desires disappear from the heart of the devotee, he becomes more attached to the service of the Lord. And by such attachment, he becomes free from material contamination. In that state of life, he can understand the Supreme Lord. This is the statement of Srimad Bhagavatam also. After liberation, the process of bhakti or transcendental service continues, which is what we discussed in the shloka yesterday, right? the Lord has been speaking about Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga has to culminate in bhakti at some point in time. The Vedanta Sutra confirms this. Aprayanat tatrapi hidrishtam. This means that after liberation, the process of devotional service continues. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, real devotional liberation is defined as the reinstatement of the living entity in his own identity, his own constitutional position. So you are fully in the Satchidananda state when you are serving the Lord in your original constitutional position. The constitutional position is already explained. Every living entity is a part and parcel, fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, his constitutional position is to serve. After liberation, the service is never stopped. Actual liberation is getting free from the misconceptions of life. We can read one more commentary as well. Sri Krishna stated in the previous verse that on becoming situated in transcendental knowledge, one develops devotion. So to develop bhakti, you first need to understand who is Krishna. But then yesterday we said there is no prerequisite for bhakti. You just based on faith, the Acharya is telling you to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Just based on some borrowed faith, you can also develop an understanding of who Krishna is. And automatically, when you develop an understanding of who Krishna is, then devotion automatically develops. Now he says that only through devotion can one come to know God's personality. Previously, the Jnani had realized God as the Nirguna, qualityless, Nirvishesha, attributeless, and Nirakar, formless Brahman. But the Jnani had no realization of the personal form of God. The secret of that personal form cannot be known through karma, jnana, ashtanga yoga, etc. It is love that opens the door to the impossible and makes way for the inaccessible. Shri Krishna states here that the mystery of God's form, virtues, pastimes, abode, and associates can only be comprehended through unalloyed devotion. The devotees understand God because they possess the eyes of love. The Padma Puran mentions a beautiful incident illustrating the above truth. A rishi by the name Jabali saw a very effulgent and peaceful maiden meditating in the forest. He requested her to reveal her identity and the purpose of meditation. She replied, I am Brahma Vidya, the science of knowing the self, which ultimately leads to the Brahman realization of God. Great yogis and mystics perform austerities to know me. However, I am myself performing severe austerities to develop love at the lotus feet of the personal form of God. I am replete and satiated with the bliss of Brahman. Yet, without loving attachment to Lord Krishna, I feel empty and void. Thus, mere knowledge is insufficient for relishing the bliss of the personal form of God. It is through bhakti that one enters into the secret and achieves full God consciousness. So, there is a clear indication that Brahman realization is not the topmost realization. That beyond that, there is complete, unadulterated, unmotivated, uninterrupted love for the Supreme Lord. So even the Jnanis, as we heard, right? Examples of the Sanat Kumaras, example of Janaka Maharaj, how everybody got hooked to Bhakti Yoga unexpectedly. In Dwapar Yoga, we heard about Shukadev Goswami. Yeah. And in Kali Yuga, the example given is of Sripad Adi Sankaracharya. Yeah. So here the Lord is saying, Bhaktyamam abhijanati. Without bhakti, you cannot get to know who I am. So if you want to know your lover, you have to serve him, right? How do you have an intimate relationship with the lover? The more you associate with him and his loved ones, then the more you get to know him and serve him. And that is how your love strengthens. So love means a relationship between two different entities, two different individuals. So here the Lord is categorically stating that only through devotion one can know him. That means even the Jnani does not know him fully. The Jnani has understood only a portion of the Supreme Lord's feature. So the Lord is saying here, only when you're fully conscious of who I am, and that comes through devotion, then you can enter the kingdom of.
If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell notification. If you'd like to join our classes every day, please check the details in the description section of this video. We look forward to serving you.